ladies and gentlemen. Just going to double check the mic check. Seem to be a little bit quiet. Let's make sure the audio levels are good. But here we are, the Sunday season finale here at the Nordschleife endurance course. As man goes around once more. Poplinski currently the only driver with a valid lap time. But the big one to bring an end to this Sunday multi-class series. 8 weeks of racing in this series, 8 races so far. This will be the final one of the series. We are about halfway through this qualifying session, this practice session, and we will be having a 1-hour practice that we are nearly through with now, and then a 15-minute qualifying session, which is going to be a 2-shot qualifier, and then we will have a 1-hour race tonight with 1 required pit stop, and that pit stop will be needed to bring those cars home. But the battle of attrition, most of the 1-hour races have been not too entirely packed with action. This will be the greatest race of the series so far, in my opinion, as this will put the drivers to the ultimate test in terms of both skill and understanding of the machine that they are piloting. Slokey coming into the carousel. Nice and tidy to the inside. Heading to the more technical bit of the track. Coming out of the carousel, headed to Posten, and then to Hoacht, before you get to the very, very technical sections of Wippermund, Eschbach, and Brunchen, aka known as YouTube Corner. Wippermund here, guide the car through the inside of the curves. You head up to Eschbach, which is just going to be a finding of the apex, late apex, before you head down the hill into Brunchen, which is where you are going to ride very, very wide to the outside of the track, and then this is where you would see all of your media crews and things like that in the olden days, where they didn't have many stations all over the track. They would always be posted up there, most famously being Auto Addiction, and then later on more and more channels, but Auto Addiction still the largest one. Then screaming down the hill. For a couple downshifts, touch of the brake for the right-hander uphill, but the very, very tricky left-hander before the Kleine carousel. Once again, this will be the battle of attrition tonight. Is to finish first. First you must finish. And there is no more challenging circuit in the world than the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Yes, Horner abandoning another lap, or spinning that car around, trying to bring that car back to the start-finish line to start another lap. Car number 181 of Harvey in the Audi R8 GT2. Then bringing that car into the pits, maybe practicing a pit stop here. There are two opportunities for pit stops as you come across or come out of the Nordschleife Strecke. You can pull over to the right hand side as Harvey did here and pull into the pit lane, or just before you're about to exit the Grand Prix Strecke, you can take the right hand hairpin into the pit lane. Horner around on track once again, as I believe that was car 212 of Poplinski coming through just in the background of that shot of Horner. Bird only a couple tenths of a, or less than a tenth of a second behind the time of Poplinski. Doesn't mean too much in practice yet, but still very, very close between two times in such a long track. Still way off the optimal times, though. We should see times anywhere from the 8-minute 30 all the way down to the 8-minute 10. But it's just whether or not the drivers tonight can bring those laps together. Darnell, the first time getting down closer to the optimal times with an 8:24.3 in practice to be the first of his valid laps. Now, just because you can put together one lap doesn't mean you can win the race. You need to put together many laps tonight. We are probably looking at around 6 or 7 laps, but by the time you are at the third lap, you are likely going to be running low on fuel. You'll have to pit in the first, or you don't have to pit in the first 30 minutes at all. You can try and take the car the entire duration, but you will have to pit either at the very beginning or the very end of the race to get the pit stop requirement out of the way. Darnell losing the car big time through the Schumacher S and will abandon the lap. Number 14 of Man, now the leading car. Actually, no, it is the 103 of Bird, as Man goes deep before exiting the Grand Prix Strecke. Bird now out on track pretty much all on his lonesome. See if we can find someone at the beginning of a lap, or hopefully we can ride on with Alarcon now coming down the Dottinger Höhe. A little bit of damage on the front of that McLaren, but should not be anything. A little bit of damage on the rear, may have had a spin. Not on a valid lap, but is bringing the car home. Coming through Tiergarten and then into Hohenrain before bringing the car back onto the Grand Prix Strecke for the start-finish line. Back to turn 1 into the Mercedes Arena. Hard on the brakes after being full on the throttle for a very long time. Then we do not take the full Mercedes Arena as you would in the regular Nürburgring Grand Prix configuration. But we head down the hill towards the Yokohama S. Just down through the gears, bouncing between the brakes and the gears, getting the car situated nice and wide to the outside before we head down to Dunlop. The hard braking zone into the not necessarily tight, but slightly technical hairpin of Dunlop before we head up the hill for the famous Schumacher S. Carrying as much speed as you can, trying not to get two tires in the sand like Alarcon did there. But now we come down to Bilstein Curve here. And now flying up the hill through the kink before we come to the chicane. Hard on the brakes, but not too hard as you were trying to carry speed through the corner. Alarcon doing that nicely, maybe a little bit late on the brakes, missing the apex. But now we enter the Nordschleife. Take a left, and now another left for the Sabine Schmitz curve. Now we head down the hill towards Hatzenbach. Through the kink, slight left-hander, and then braking for the slight left-hander before the right-hander. Get a little bit of the curve now coming through Hatzenbach. Before we get ready to get back on the throttle full time, headed up the hill for Hocheichen. Now you get a little bit of a break heading up the hill, but you must be quick on your toes because Fluke plots the kink uphill, carrying as much speed as you can, balancing the car between the throttle and the brakes. Now we are clear through here, headed up the hill towards the daunting Schwedenkreuz. Very, very fast, misleading left-hand kink, set the car very wide up to the outside, touch the brakes, carry the car as much speed as you can before hard braking down to third or second gear for Arenberg. Now we head down the hill into the compression for Foxhole. Flying down the hill, full speed on the throttle as fast as you can go into the compression before we come up the hill for Fuchsrow, and then hard on the brakes for Adenauer Forst. The slight right-hander before a slight left-hander into the daunting chicane. Alarcon almost overshooting it, but not doing so here, keeping it clean. Now back on the throttle once more before we head to Metzgesfeld. Very technical corner, hard to say, even harder to drive. Can't quite figure if you've gone too fast or too slow through it. Now we head towards Kallenhard, a slightly open chicane, not very tight, or not chicane, hairpin, not very tight, but does pose a little bit of a threat sometimes through a small chicane before we get to Wehrsifen, but more commonly known as miss, as you miss the first cane, hit the second, miss the first apex, hit the second apex, miss the third apex. And Alarcon carrying way too much speed into the hairpin, and that car is going to be in not good shape from here on out. Hopping back on with Saba now, heading up the hill from the compression into Adenauer Forst. trying to keep that car as narrow. Do not want to get any of those curbs on the apex or outside of the corner. Now we head up the hill, pushing before we get to Metzgersfeld. This section of the track here, very, very tricky, as it is not slow, but not entirely too fast either. And now as Sava exits Kallenhard, we are now headed towards Miss Hit Miss. Missed the first apex, hit the second apex, does not hit the second apex, does not hit the third apex. Then down the hill, hard braking for the tight chicane before we head back up the hill. For Breitscheid, and then the right-hander of Ekstall. And then to the Lauda Links. Our next braking zone is going to be at Bergwerk, where we get onto what is considered to be maybe the back straight here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Now our next corner of interest is going to be Kesselchen. Of all of the kinks here on this section of track, there's only one that's got an apex curve, and that is Kesselchen right here. Now we are past Kesselchen, heading up the hill towards Klostertal, and then to the very, very daunting Mutt curve. Touch of the brakes, down a gear, try to carry as much speed as you can through. Very, very easy to lose too much time here, but also even easier to carry too much speed and go into the wall at Mutt curve that will invalidate the lap. Now as we head back towards the carousel, second or third gear around the sort of hairpin before we hard brake down into the carousel, dump the car in, carry through as fast as you can. There's a lot of banking on there. The car will follow as long as you can keep it within the lines. Saba does so. Now heading up the hill towards Posten, 147, and then Hohe Acht. Just coming through Hohe Acht now before we get to the very, very tricky, but also very, very rewarding when you get it right, Wipperman. As we head towards Wipperman, setting up very nicely, getting as much of those two flat curves as you can, flying the car wide to the outside, trying to carry all of the speed. Now we head towards Eschbach and then Brunchen. Just coming through Brunchen now, trying to get as close to the inside apex as you can, then float to that car as wide to the outside as you can. Now coming through the famously known YouTube corner. You've made it this far, you are almost done, but some of the trickiest parts are up ahead. As we come out of Brunchen, we are now heading towards Flansgarten, the famous jump on the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Getting a little bit of air there from Saba, then touch the brakes, down a gear, carry all the speed that you can, and then we are flat out from Flansgarten all the way down to the Schwalbenschwanz corner. A slight high-speed chicane before we get on the brakes. Down a gear, down 2 gears, down 3 gears, down 4 gears. Try to carry the speed as much as you can, but also not carry too much speed. Now to the Kleine Carousel, the second carousel on the track. Very easy to lose the car exiting the Kleine Carousel too early. Now coming through Galgenkopf and then onto the Dardinger Höhe. Lap is good from Saba, but does it have the pace? There's almost no way to know until the lap is over. You can try and guess your best as you come onto the Dardinger Höhe. But even then, the work is not over yet. You must make it through Tiergarten and then Hohenrhein, which is some of the easiest places to throw away the lap time. As we are now coming through Tiergarten, the left-hander. It's single file through here. There's not much of a move here as we head into Hohenrhein. Down on the brakes, trying to keep that car, or get that car slowed down as you've been on the throttle, full throttle, top of the gearing coming down the Dodinger Hollow. Now Saba with the lap time, what will it be? It is P1 by 1.7 seconds ahead of Darnell here in free practice. Saba hard on the brakes down for the turn 1 at Mercedes Arena before cutting back through across the Mercedes Arena, rejoining where we would be skipping about 3 or 4 corners that the Grand Prix circuit has. And a little bit of an issue with cars up ahead, but Saba, the provisional leader here in free practice. Those Mercedes are very loud. Horner, a very quick driver. Have not seen him recently in the past few weeks of this series, but he is here for the finale, trying his best to maybe recover some points. Also, Bushman, one that we typically see here in this series, but all but has the championship secured. Does not necessarily need to race tonight to have the Sunday championship locked down. And if it is your first time tuning in with us here at TRC, this is not the only season finale that we have. The Sunday season finale tonight here at the Nordschleife Endurance Track. But on Wednesday, we have the finale of our KTM Cannonball Series, a spec multi-class series between KTM GT2s and KTM GT4s as Horner goes wide before Flonsgarten there. Does keep the car under control, but would not be good for keeping a valid lap. But the finale for the Wednesday KTM Cannonball Series is this week, Wednesday at Donington Park. And the championship there is very, very close. In this series, though, for the final round, the season finale here in the Sunday Multi-Class Series, Busch does have the championship secured. I do not believe that he will drop any races that would bring him down in points. But has not missed a race this season. May see him come in and join the session before we get to the end of this practice session. In P2 though, or the fight for P2 in the championship between Harrell and Wagner. If Harrell races tonight and Wagner does not, I believe that would give Harrell the advantage over Wagner and give Harrell, or lock down the second place in the championship for Harrell. In GT3, just 1 second. Darnell is in the lead ahead of Saba, but a poor finish from either driver will be enough to guarantee the other the championship win. If Saba wins tonight and Darnell has a very poor finish, or maybe even out of the points, then Saba would be in the lead of the championship when the checkered flag falls. If Darnell and Saba have a terrible race tonight, get taken out early, get involved in an incident, or maybe have an incident of their own individually, and Mott brings home a win, which he has brought home his first win in this series a couple rounds ago at Zolder. If Mott is able to sneak away with a win here tonight, he could displace the leading Darnell and the chasing Saba and steal the championship win away from both drivers. Slokey, with some good points, is in a position to move up into the championship podium. Does need quite a good run tonight ahead of Mott, Saba, and Darnell, but could bring himself into the championship fight. If he has a considerably good finish over Mott, then it may give Mott the advantage there. Mott may not be racing tonight, so Slokey may be in a position to take that P3 in the championship standings away. Practice is heating up as there is really only a lap and a half left of time, so the drivers that are on this lap now will have this lap and I believe one more, running at about 8 minutes 20 seconds a lap. And not every driver has set a lap yet. Some with trouble, some just not having been out on track. But with 10 minutes left in free practice, it is going to be a very interesting qualifying. Some drivers may not qualify. Some drivers may opt to qualify at the back of the pack or start in the pits. It could be a strategy call there, starting in the pit lane. Darnell invalid this lap, but coming to join the rest of the field starting a new lap. May have one more, or will have one more opportunity to set a flying lap if he chooses to do so. Hard on the brakes for turn 1. Very tricky to overshoot the first corner, as it is the one that you think of the least whenever you are running your laps in practice and qualifying. It's the one that you use the most as you come out of pit lane, or use the least as you come out of pit lane. You are maybe not at full throttle, and then you come around the track to get started with your flying lap, and you misjudge your first braking zone. Then you've got to go around the Grand Prix section of the track once more to get the turnaround for the qualifying section, which you will see very many drivers using tonight. The turn in for the qualifying just after the chicane and the pit lane entrance. The Grand Prix pit lane entrance, that is. Darnell coming through Bielstein now. And Saba was on an invalid lap, does have damage on the front of that car. Will probably be the end of the sessions for Saba tonight, or the end of the practice session for Saba. We'll pull that car into the pit lane. Practice pit stop down on the brakes, getting that car down to speed limit, pit lane speed limit, getting on the limiter, and then bringing that car into the pit lane. A couple Porsches here tonight, but no Porsche times set yet. Breakfast coming down the hill. What I believe is Kesselchen, and then heading up to Mutkurva. Getting ever so much closer to the carousel, which is known by some to be the halfway point of the track. It is not necessarily halfway through the lap, but it is recognized as the halfway point of the track as the track transforms from the fast flying sections of Flugplatz, Schwedenkreuz, Fuchsrow, Adenauer Forst, Metzgefeld. Now you are in the tight section of the track headed towards Hoheacht, Wipperman, Brunchen, Flansgarten. Very, very technical. You can make your way all the way around the rest of the track in a great pace and in great form, but if you cannot handle the technical section here all the way from Wipperman to Flansgarten, then your lap is basically worthless. This is the time where the drivers who are comfortable here will make up a lot of time on those who are not comfortable through this section. And also a very good or a very common area to start incidents, as maybe somebody gets too much curb at Wipperman, not enough curb at Wipperman, runs the car wide, bounces off the walls, and there is no runoff here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. If you go off the track, you are bouncing back onto the racing surface. So holding the brakes, trying your best to keep that car from re-entering the racing surface in front of other drivers will be crucial. We will likely be seeing a lot of marshal post waving yellow flags. Darnell dropping the time down to an 8:21, inching closer and closer towards top times, but not happening so much yet in this practice session. Breakfast coming up to the Kleine Carousel now in that Porsche 992 GT2 Club Sport. Now onto the Dodinger Hoa, and in a multi-class setting that we will have tonight, these GT2 cars are really able to show their strength down the Dodinger Hoa. They will have about a 20 kilometer an hour pace difference over the GT3s, and if there is a GT2 and a GT3 in battle, that GT2 is going to win this fight all day. The GT3s can try to use that superior GT2 speed to maybe pull them ahead in a slipstream battle, but they will not be able to keep up on raw pace and likely will not be able to keep up in the slipstream. But the GT2s will lose out throughout the rest of the lap in terms of aerodynamic help and aerodynamic handling increase. Breakfast now with a practice pit stop. Kelta joining in now, as well as Merkel, another Porsche on the track tonight. Darnell ahead, coming through Wipperman now. Into Brunchen. On a valid lap here, but does not seem to be carrying the most comfortable pace through. A little bit dodgy coming into Brunchen there. Headed up the hill towards Flansgarten. Now, if you know anything about Nissan GTRs and Flansgarten, they don't mix very well. That incident with the Nissan GTR Nismo at Flansgarten, I want to say back in 2017. If you watch the Gran Turismo movie, you would maybe get that reference a little bit there. Then Darnell with the downshift as he heads up towards Kleine Carousel. Godzilla throwing flames out of both sides of that car on that downshift. Very, very pretty. As we have a few cars left out on track. Darnell up towards Tiergarten to complete this lap, carrying a lot of speed. I believe he is confident in this lap, but he will not have enough time. But that is what happens at Hohenrain. Too much speed into Tiergarten, and you can throw away the lap just like that. It may have been an improvement into the teens, the 18s, but it was not to be on this lap coming through for the practice pit stop, and will bring that car to a stop to conclude his practice session. Car number 91, Alarcon, still out on track, as well as the 727 of Kelta. Alarcon going wide at the corner just before the Kleine Carousel. Now getting the car positioned for a top speed maximum attack run down the Döttinger Höhe. And using that McLaren top speed to its greatest ability. And something that you will see, any GT3 that maybe has an advantage in top speed over another, that difference will be shown down the Döttinger Höhe, but slipstream will play a crucial role in keeping those cars tight together. The cars that know that they have a little bit higher top speed over the others will try their best to break that toe before they get to the Döttinger Höhe, because if there's a car within slipstream range down the Döttinger Höhe, they may be well passing you by the time you get to the end of the Döttinger Höhe and into Tiergarten. Alarcon putting a time on the board. It's good enough for P6, but there are faster times on the board there. And once again, welcome to those in the Twitch and YouTube chats. Don't have any endurance racing wisdom or opinions to share with you all. I did not watch the 6 hours of Watkins Glen, nor did I watch the, I believe still currently rained out NASCAR New Hampshire race, and IndyCar is at Laguna Seca right now. The clock rounds down to 0. No one is on a valid lap except for Alarcon, but Alarcon will not have enough time to finish this lap. And Alarcon may bring that car around for the Joker and then bring it into the pits. I am not sure, but he does not have enough time to finish this lap. And this time will be crucial here as Alarcon pulls the car over to the right-hand side and will bring it to the pit lane, and that will commence the qualifying session here for the season finale at the Nordschleife Endurance here in this Sunday multi-class series. I believe the Green Hill has scared away the majority of the competitors, because we have had as many as 30 cars, 35 cars in this Sunday series. Not many of those drivers showing up tonight, but those who have, it will be a test of endurance and a test of skill, as this is the greatest test in sports car racing, the 24 hours of the Nordschleife. We are only doing a 24th of that time tonight, a 1-hour race with a 1-hour pit stop. But if you would like to see how those drivers will start and in what order they will start, we will find out shortly in qualifying. And as qualifying is started now, who will be the first one out? Darnell getting on the throttle, getting that car started up, will be the first out on track, with Saba just behind. The championship fight right here on screen. Darnell and Saba both coming out together to start their qualifying. It will be a 2-shot qualifier. They will come around the Grand Prix course one time and then hit the turnaround for the qualifying Joker lap, as it is called. And then it will reset their time, and they will come down the pit lane stretch once more and do the Grand Prix Strecke all over again before turning left at the final turn of the Grand Prix Strecke and then head towards Sabine Schmidt's curve. As Darnell is leading the field currently, he will have some traffic coming out of the pit lane, I believe. But Darnell coming through Bielstein all alone. Saba in the Lamborghini maybe had a little bit of an issue, is further behind now. Maybe a strategy call in terms of positioning there. Darnell coming through the chicane for the first time. Will be hard on the brakes and turn around, essentially driving the Grand Prix circuit once more. Flying way to the outside to carry as much speed as he can across the start-finish line to start his first official flying lap. As the rest of the field will do the same. Darnell hard on the brakes down towards turn number 1. Then starting the Mercedes arena, but not finishing it as you cut across the course. Missing the majority of the Mercedes arena, then heading down towards the Yokohama S. And as we balance the gears and the brakes down the hill, down the Yokohama S, before we then head down the hill even further into Dunlop, the Dunlop hairpin. Then as we come through the Dunlop hairpin, we will now be heading up the hill towards the Schumacher S. Very, very tricky and technical section on this course. Very easy to carry too much speed and run the car wide, run the car too narrow, run the car too wide. Can lose a lot of speed. You just get one tire on either side into the sand. Now coming through the left-hander before we get into the Bielstein curve. Then heading up the hill through the kink to the chicane, and Darnell will be leading the field onto the Nordschleife. Hard braking into the chicane, but not too hard to carry as much speed as you can. Darnell nicely across the curves using all of the curb that is there to be used, and then we take a left where we took a right previously. Now we are on the Nordschleife coming through Sabine Schmidt's curve before we head down the hill towards Hatzenbach. Then down on the brakes, very, very tricky technical section, very easy to carry too much speed and bounce off the walls. The lap can be over right here, and all the work that is done thus far will have to be done one more time, but Darnell seems to be coming through Hatzenbach nicely. Now through the awkward turn of Hockheiken before we are flat out up the hill headed towards Flugplatz. Very, very tricky technical section of Flugplatz up the hill. The nose wants to lift. You don't let it touch the brakes. Bring the nose back down. Bring the car down a gear before you get back on the throttle. Full throttle. Coming out of Flugplatz. Now we head down the hill towards the very, very daunting Schwedenkreuz. Doesn't seem too hard on paper, but very hard on practice. Touch of the brakes down a gear. No brakes from Darnell, just a lift, and you can keep it in 6th gear. Down a gear and on the brakes is as safe as Darnell comes through Arnberg, where you are down on the brakes and down a gear. Then we head down the hill towards the Fuchsrow, or Foxhole as they call it. Then heading towards the compression before we go back up the hill into Adenauer Forst. Coming out of the compression up the hill, 2 tires on the kink that is not there anymore. But in this version of the track, you can take it now to the tight chicane of Adenauer Forst. And back on the throttle. A short, straight section before we head to Mutgesfeld. Or Medigesfeld. I've been reading that one wrong the whole time. Medigesfeld. And then left to the open hairpin of Kallenhard. And then Spiegel curve before Dreifach Rectus, which I will just call miss hit, miss here. Missed the first apex. Closer to the second apex, did not hit it, and then miss the third apex. And then down into Verselfen, an almost weird hairpin chicane mix. And then the left-hander down the hill towards the left-hander of Brideside before we come up the hill of Exmula. And then through the Lauda Links before we get to our next braking zone of Bergwerk, which puts us on the quote-unquote backstretch of the Nordschleife here. Braking into Bergwerk, carrying all the speed. Don't necessarily want to get two tires on the curb. You can, but it is very, very risky coming off of those curbs. Now we are flying up the hill. You do lose a little bit of speed parasitic loss from the incline as we come through Kesselchen, the only curbed apex on this backstretch. And then Klostertal before we get to the very, very tricky Mutt Curva. Very easy to carry too much speed through. Darnell very, very wide, but that is how you run as close to the wall as you can without touching it. Through Steelstrecke, and then down, down, down onto the brakes for the hairpin before we head up the hill towards the first and major, the famous carousel here on the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Chuck the car in as fast as you can into the carousel, carry as much of the speed as you can, treat it like an oval track, use that camber and that banking to carry the car through. And now up the hill towards Hoaacht. We are now on the tricky technical section of the course. It is the shortest quote-unquote section of the course, but it is the most technical and the trickiest section. Coming through Wipperman, set up very wide to get as much speed as you can coming across the flat curves, using them to your full advantage. And then we head up the hill towards Eschbach before we come back down the hill for Brunchen, but Darnell loses it at Eschbach, and the crucial track here, or the crucial section of track here, being where you can make all your time or lose all your time. And Darnell has shown that you can lose it there. Was on a very, very good lap, but as we come through, Brunchen will be down on time. The lap no longer valid either. Was a great lap, would have put him in a good position to get the lap out of the way, but now he will have one more shot at the lap, if that. May have enough time for another lap, may not. Qualifying session, or the qualifying time in the session may have been too short, coming through Flonsgarten and then down the hill before we head towards the Kleine Carousel. The Stefan Beloff S before we get to Schwabenschwanz. And then the Kleine Carousel here. And then the square double right-hander before we get onto the Döttinger Höhe. Now full speed from here all the way to Tiergarten. And exercising the speed of that Nissan GTR Nismo. Horner, the only car currently on a flying lap, but does have some traffic behind. But Horner will be setting the first time of the night as long as he can bring the lap home clean. He does have some traffic, but we should see the pace difference between the GT2s and the GT3s here once we get under the Döttinger Höhe. Horner is the cause of those blue flags as the cars ahead are on slower, or not slower, but they are on invalid laps, and Horner is the car on a valid lap here. But as we are now on the Döttinger Höhe, we will see the maximum pace of the GT2s to see what they can do to eliminate that gap between the GT2s and the GT3s. Slipstream and the higher horsepower of that GT2 has put him all the way onto the rear bumper of Saba looking for the inside as they head down towards Tiergarten. Horner does get past Harvey, setting the first valid lap of the session, as Horner goes very, very deep into Tiergarten, 2 tires on the grass. Does concede the position back to Saba as they come through Hohenraden. Harvey currently P1 in GT2, Darnell currently P1 in GT3, Kelta P2, but Saba goes up into first place in GT3 with an 8:26. Harvey P1 GT2, Darnell P2 in GT3. Darnell has some work to do but will not have time to do it. Now has to get that work done on the track, but currently as long as no one runs a faster lap than Darnell, Darnell will start on the track directly behind Saba. And as the rest of the field will be coming through, they do not have enough time. You did keep it valid. On my screen it showed it blue, but I believe there is a glitch that is causing valid laps to be shown as invalid with that blue marker. Merkel with heavy damage on the front of that Porsche. And car number 42 of Slokey still on track. I believe will be the last to finish a lap. Will be the last driver with enough time to finish the lap. Slokey heading up the hill towards Tiergarten, all on his lonesome. As we have had about half the field set a flying lap. The rest of the field not setting a lap yet. Slokey looks to be the last driver to set a flying lap here. And as Slokey comes out of Hohenraden, what will the lap be for Slokey? Darnell needs it to not be faster than him. And it's not a valid lap. Slokey, I don't believe, will have enough time for another lap, but we'll go for it anyway, see how far he can get. Car number 81 of Breakfast also out on track trying to complete a lap, and then car number 19 of Merkel also out on track trying to complete a lap. It depends on how much time is left or is allowed as the timer hits 0. Between the practice and qualifying sessions, it was only 3 minutes. That would not be enough time for Slokey to bring that back unless he transforms that Ferrari into a Formula 1 car. But Breakfast now headed out of Hawkeiken up the hill towards Flugplatz. Slokey just barely coming out of the Schumacher S. Then into Bielstein. We have had a couple cars leave the pit lane. Car number 555 of Mott coming out of the pit lane, but likely will not have enough time to finish the lap unless there is a very, very long wait timer between the qualifying and race sessions here. Slokey gets the car upset coming through the chicane, and that will end Slokey's venture for a valid lap. Breakfast all on his own coming down the hill towards Foxhole, or towards the compression into Foxhole. Then up the hill for Adenauer Forest. Very, very crucial to carry as much speed as you can up the hill. And then a little bit of rear slippage from that Porsche GT2. And then coming out of Adenauer Forest, flying up the hill, then down the hill for Medigasfeld. And that will end the session as we hit 0. The field has been set. Much to many drivers' dismay. Harvey P1, Horner P2, Poplinski P3, Bird P4, Breakfast P5, Harold P6, and Elizondo P7. But only 3 drivers setting a lap there. In GT3, Saba P1, Darnell P2. The fight of the race will be here in GT3 between Saba and Darnell, as it is not just the fight for the win, it is the fight for the championship. Darnell ahead of Saba, but if Darnell has a poor finish and Saba wins, that would likely give Saba the championship. If Saba has a poor race and Darnell wins, it should secure the championship for Darnell. Kelta P3, Ditto P4, Alarcon P5, Mott P6, Slokey P7, Man P8, Crilly P9, and Merkel P10. The field is set. The championship fight is on in GT3, but who will be the one ahead? Will it be Darnell in the Nissan GTR? He has been very outspoken in his dismay in choosing that specific GT3. And then the Saba in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, who joined this season very early on, but not for the first race, but has shown great pace since he's joined, won many, many races. It should not be a full formation lap. It should only be a short lap, as we should start somewhere around Tiergarten with the field. The field should line up at Tiergarten, and then it should just be from Tiergarten to the start-finish line. There is no full formation lap. Some people have accidentally made it a full formation lap. But no, it is not a full formation lap. Checking in with the YouTube chat. Thank you all for tuning in. I understand that it is not as large of a field as we usually see here in the Sunday series, especially for the season finale, but some drivers seem to not be entirely comfortable with the Nordschleife, so I can understand not wanting to push yourself right here, especially at the end of the season if maybe you're not in the fight for a championship position. And as the field is set at the end of the Döttinger Höhe just before Tiergarten, it will be a short formation. It is not a full formation lap. It is just a short formation stretch before we head up the hill, up the road towards the start-finish line. On board with Saba. Saba, with all the work to do, needs to win this race tonight, needs Darnell to have some sort of incident to take Darnell very far outside of the points, or a very low points score. Saba needs the win tonight to take home the championship. It's going to come down to whether or not Saba wins for the GT3 championship. Darnell needs to deny Saba the chance. Darnell needs everything that he can to keep Saba at bay. Both of these drivers in GT3 need a perfect race, but the odds of both of them running a perfect race are very low. In the race, it's a little bit different, though. The nerves are calmed down. We may see a better run in the race, as both drivers will not be pushing as hard, will be driving the cars safer. But the fight is on. The stage has been set here in the season finale of the Sunday GT3 and GT2 multi-class series. Good luck, drivers. Good luck, those on track. This is the ultimate test of skill here. If you are going to show that you have the speed to bring it home here, and that you have the skill to keep it on track for the entire hour, you need to do it here at the hardest track that we have available, the Nürburgring Nordschleife endurance configuration. And as the cars have been started, we are about to get started with the racing here tonight. A 1 hour, 1 stop session, beginning to end, double points for the championship. And we are now rolling. A couple drivers starting from the pit lane. Saba leading the field as we head up the hill towards Tiergarten. And immediately with the 2x2 call for the formation lap, not much time to get the tires warmed up. And the field comes up towards Hohenrain. Welcome in, guys, welcome in. Sad that I'm not seeing you out on track here, but very glad to have you in here in the chat. And for the final time in this Sunday multi-class series, we are ready to take the green flag as Saba leads the field to the line. And for the final time in this series, green, 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 we are racing here in the TRC Sunday multi-class series. Harvey gets a great run down the hill, but Darnell, knowing what is on the line, goes for the move on Saba very early, but Horner and Harvey both in battle big time for the front spot, or the leading spot on the field. But that does not help Darnell one bit. Saba now has the advantage. Darnell 2 tires on the grass in the sand, trying to get back past Saba. Darnell needs to be ahead at the end of this race. Needs to be ahead of Saba, or if not ahead, very, very close to him. So we have had someone go into the grass behind this pack. Saba does not lead the field. Harvey leads the field with the chasing GT2 of Horner. Darnell and Saba nearly make contact as they come through Dunlop. Then they head up the hill towards the Schumacher. That's the first technical section of the track here, as they cycle through all in single file. There is no 2x2 through the Schumacher S. If there is, it's very, very slow. Harvey ahead of Horner, ahead of Saba, ahead of Darnell, with Kelta hanging on to the very end of this lead pack. Kelta completing the GT3 podium here in the lead pack, but goes wide at the exit of Bielstein. And that will likely put Kelta under attack from chasing cars behind. But the battle here at the front between Darnell and Saba, and then Harvey and Horner. As they come through, Darnell gets a little bit too eager with the curb at the exit of the chicane, but Harvey and Horner, Harvey goes very deep as they come through the Sabine Schmidt curva. Horner goes for the move early, and Horner ahead of Harvey as they head towards Hatzenbeck. Down the hill, using that speed, using the what little camber is there. Horner ahead of Harvey, and then Saba ahead of Darnell. The battle for both classes here, all in one frame. Horner goes very deep at Hatzenbeck, allows Harvey back through, but closes the door before Saba has the chance to sneak by, forcing Saba and Darnell back into the battle for the lead. Once again, this is the championship battle in GT3 between Darnell and Saba. Darnell has the car with the higher top speed, but Saba has the better handling car, and we will see how their pace difference is throughout the lap. They both ran very, very close laps in practice and in qualifying as well. But this is where we will see the performance of those cars really shine, where they are gaining that time on the lap. Darnell needs to have a perfect run through the technical sections of this track, such as Whipperman and Brunchen. Horner looking for a move on Harvey into Arenberg, does not happen, but will be fully in the slipstream as they head down into Foxhole. Looking for the slipstream as they head up the hill into the compression. Kelta has found his way back onto the back of this lead pack. And then as they come through into Adenauer Forest, very, very tricky Everyone needs to be on their aces. Horner goes deep into Adenauer. Force cuts through the track, tries to rejoin the track, and does not hamper, or actually maybe does hamper Kelta slightly, but slides perfectly back into the back of this battle. Does not fall out of the top 5. Will stay within slipstream range. Back just behind this lead pack, Man and Slokey locked in battle here with Poplinski, and then Alarcon, Merkel, and Bird all together here. Darnell and Saba, this is the fight for the GT3 championship. It will be the focus of the night, as Saba needs to finish ahead of Darnell. Darnell needs to leave Saba in the dust, but as long as Darnell finishes close to Saba, Darnell should have the championship locked down. Darnell is no stranger to championship drama when it comes to point scoring, as there was some last season with the Maserati Madness Series. Looks to find a championship here in GT3 in this 8-week Sunday series. Horner found the wall at Brideside. Is not going to help Horner very much at all. Will have damage to repair on that car. And then Horner just having to follow the rest of the field. Harvey up into the overall lead, leading GT2 with Saba chasing and Darnell just behind Saba. Kelta just barely hanging on to the back end of this lead pack, but is outside of slipstream range currently. Darnell using that slipstream to hang on to the rear of that Lamborghini of Saba. Harvey trying his best to run away, and that GT2 top speed will help him do so as they come onto the Dottinger Hoa later on in the lap. Saba letting Darnell close that gap up slightly as they head up into the carousel for the first time this race. Then dropping the car down into the carousel. Very, very crucial to get this right. You will lose a ton of speed if you get spit out of the carousel early. Also very easy to lose the car in the carousel, as you saw Saba nearly three-wheeling, but Darnell forcing his way past as they head up the hill towards Hoayocht. But Darnell gets a bit of the curb and is up into the wall. Will try and rejoin the track, does so, but does not keep it straight hard into the wall. Once again, that is going to be severe damage for that Nissan GTR. We will need to see if that damage is enough to affect the handling. That is exactly what Darnell did not need, but that is exactly what Saba needed. Saba, having the stars align here, needs to bring this race home. It is not over yet, because Saba can do the exact same thing, and that move can swap the positions back. A mistake from Saba puts Darnell back into this fight, but as of right now, Darnell just in the podium points, but cannot afford another incident. Does have damage on that car. Does seem to be slightly affecting the handling. But in the front of the field, Harvey leading Saba, both class leaders all on their lonesome. And it will have to be a perfect race. Saba is no stranger to a perfect race, but also no stranger to a mistake. We have seen Saba from the lead make a mistake, a crucial mistake that has cost Saba the win before. Saba needs to run that masterclass race that he has done so before tonight, just to solidify his chances at the championship win tonight. Darnell off the track once more. That is going to be severe damage on that car, and I believe it may have been an incident with Kelta. That is exactly what Darnell did not need. That will be an early pit lane for Darnell, and that strategy may play into Darnell's hand, but then he would have a lot longer to keep that car together, and currently not doing so hot on one lap. Would need to do it for maybe 7 laps. The leaders down the Dottinger Hoa, Harvey with Saba in tow behind. But Harvey in that GT2 exercising that higher top speed, breaking away from Saba. Darnell has found himself back in P2 as car number 22 of Crilly around at Schwalbenschreuz. But a very large pack of cars here down the Dodinger Hoa. Mott, Slokey, Breakfast, Ditto. I believe Merkel is at the lead of this, or actually Merkel at the back of this fight. But all the way from Bird, Horner has found himself back here in this fight. I believe Alarcon, Breakfast, Ditto, Mott, Slokey, 5 cars all here battling for position. Coming through Tiergarten and then Hohenrain. Harvey still your leader, Saba still in tow, Darnell early in the pits as well as Kelta early in the pits. It will be the early stop for these two. Could play into strategy, but they are going to have to go a lot longer on tires and fuel. We'll need to account for that in the pit strategy. As Breakfast going wide at turn 2. Ditto and Slokey with Mott all together here at the back of the field. Slokey damage on the front of that Ferrari. Has shown some pace, but just has not shown the consistency to keep the car together on track long enough. But all a battle for position here. Mott with a little bit of markings on the side of that Aston Martin, but overall doesn't seem to have too much damage. Poplinski all on his own in a little bit of a no man's land as they come through these 2 square corners. Harvey with Saba in tow. Both of these drivers just need to run their race best they can. Saba up ahead now has built a little bit of a cushion, but still cannot afford a mistake. And here the mistakes do find you. No matter how good of a driver you are not immune from them. Horner, extremely unfortunate for Horner, repairing that car coming out of the pit lane, getting a stop and go penalty. Will come around at the final corner of the Grand Prix circuit and will serve that penalty. Has 3 laps to do so, may be able to get out on track and try to keep that car on pace, try and run a couple laps and then serve that penalty. But just as likely can bring that car in early to serve that penalty early. Poplinski found himself in P2 in GT2, running all on his own. Darnell now out of the pits. No speeding penalties for Darnell or Kelta, and they have both got their pit lane entries out of the way, a 5th or a 6th of the way through this race so far. And Darnell and Kelta first to complete their stops. Horner also completing the stop, but having a stop and go penalty, will have to re-enter the pit lane. Harvey and Saba up ahead, and mistakes like penalties or crashes on track are not impossible. Anything can happen here at the Nordschleife, no matter where you are on track. Darnell currently P2 in class. Actually, not P2 in class, waiting on the timing boards to update, and they will update eventually, as Darnell is now dropping down the field, but just has to run his own race. Will not have many cars around to judge the pace off of, but needs to keep that car alive long enough to finish the race. Needs the points, regardless of what they are, needs the points. Currently P11 overall, that would put him P6 in class. And very far behind the rest of the pack, as Harvey and Saba close together here on track, heading down the hill towards Breitscheid and then up the hill at Exmühle. Poplinski all on his own. Car number 14 of Mann getting a stop and go penalty for speeding in pit lane. Unfortunate for Mann, but does have that pit stop out of the way. Darnell all on his own. Car number 727 of Kelta just behind, also on their own. But further up the track, Poplinski with Bird closing in that Maserati. This looks to be a battle brewing for P2 in GT2. The rest of the field has seemingly cycled their way into their respective positions. But back further, this group of cars still together, 3 cars in GT3 all battling for positions. These sister Aston Martins with Merkel in the 992 GT3R. Harvey still ahead of Saba for the overall lead. But Ditto, Mott, and Merkel all together here down the quote-unquote backstretch headed towards Kesselchen. These sister Aston Martins always throwing together a good fight for the camera. And they may try side by side at Mut Curve. It does not work. They will line back together. Mott and Ditto trying to carry as much speed as they can out of Mut Curve. Very, very big spot to gain or lose time. Now Breakfast seemingly holding up this group of GT3s, as those GT3s have higher downforce than the GT2s, more surfaces to use that aerodynamic downforce. And then as they head to the carousel all together, Merkel goes wide. That will cause Merkel to lose a lot of speed. Does not have the ability to carry all of that speed through raw grip alone, raw mechanical grip around the outside. Drain a late entry in this race, putting that car out on track. Then Mott and Ditto headed up the field towards Whipperman. Still behind Breakfast, but the battling Aston Martins just dancing their way through the technical section of this course, coming through Whipperman now. Mott and Ditto all over each other here, as those Aston Martins are just cycling through. Saba seems to have made a mistake. A little bit of damage on the front of that Lamborghini. And as I said earlier, no one is safe from mistakes. Harvey still up in the front of the field all on his own. Just needs to bring this home. Still has a pit stop to make, but Saba now has some complications to his stop. A little bit of damage that may need to be repaired. I'm not sure the extent of that damage and how much it is going to be affecting the aerodynamics of that car. Very, very crucial heading down the Dottinger Hoa, as you losing a couple kilometers an hour can put you in a very tough spot when it comes to battling other cars. Poplinski and Bird, this battle developing for P2 in GT2 as they come out of the Kleine carousel. Poplinski trying to run away from Bird, but Bird is inching ever so much closer, has been doing so this entire lap. Slokey working his way towards the back of those battling GT2s. Currently P2 in GT3, with Alarcon currently P3 in GT3. Darnell essentially out of the points right now, but needs to get more points, needs to get back ahead of the rest of the field. It's got to be perfect from here to the end. Hopefully he put enough fuel in it, and hopefully he can bring these tires home. But Darnell needs a perfect race from here to the finish if he wants to have any chance in holding on to this championship. Harvey starting his third lap here in the season finale. Saba still with that damage at the front of the car. Does not seem to be enough to worry about yet. Poplinski and Bird. Bird closing up on Poplinski more and more as they head down towards turn one. Poplinski very narrow with the braking zone, not setting up as wide as we saw Bird in the background, and Bird looking to carry more speed through the Mercedes arena. Slokey just creeping into the background shot of Bird, as Slokey is looking to move forward on this GT2 fight as well. Horner still with that 30-second stop and go penalty to serve Man as well with that 30-second stop and go penalty. And also a lot longer to go on tires and fuel than the rest of the field. Merkel now been passed by, or still holding on to the back of the sister Aston Martins. I confused Merkel with Breakfast for a second, as they are in very similar looking cars, one of them being a GT3, one being a GT2. The sister Aston Martins just driving the track together, as I believe Ditto has been passed by Mott now, and a small gap has grown. Poplinski with Bird behind that gap, I think, has grown slightly. Car number 915, Horner. I think actually that may have just been his penalty updating. Hopefully it wasn't another penalty, but it may have very well been another speeding penalty. But it may have just been the penalty updating, saying that he still has to serve it. Horner ahead of Darnell, but once Horner serves that penalty, it will move Darnell up in the positions. It does not do anything for him in class, but Darnell still, that car looking clean, no mistakes yet, but 40 minutes left to go, and he's already been at least 1 or 2 laps on these tires. It is going to come down to the wire for him in terms of grip. That car already has issues staying on track, and it will just get even harder for Darnell to bring that car home the further this race goes on. Poplinski with Bird just holding him, Bird behind, and Slokey slowly creeping himself into this fight. Now Slokey onto the rear of Bird. Bird will now maybe go defensive through Schradenkreuz. Does not set the car as wide as I would expect. Then down towards the braking zone, or down into the braking zone of Arenberg. Bird does close that gap up slightly to Poplinski, but Bird very much under attack from Slokey here very shortly. Alarcon, I would say all on his own, but still has the pack of Breakfast, Mott, Ditto, and Merkel behind. Mott and Ditto trying to find their way past the GT2 Porsche of Breakfast, which is currently P4 in class. This is the fight for P4 in GT3 with Mott, Ditto, and Merkel, as Mott desperately trying to find a way past Breakfast to find a hole to run away from the Aston Martin of Ditto and the Porsche of Merkel. Harvey still leading, no damage on that car, seems to be the perfect race for him so far. Saba also a little bit of damage, has made a mistake, but overall was not majorly affected by it. And Poplinski is off the track. And Bird and Slokey now all over the rear of that Mercedes AMG GT2. Bird allows Slokey through. Bird on the, Slokey on the attack towards Poplinski. Then back the McLaren of Alarcon with Mott, Breakfast, and Ditto. Mott has found his way past Breakfast, now leaving Ditto and Merkel to deal with that GT2. Merkel going wide at broadside. And car number 15 of Man, more damage on that Mercedes, bringing it into the pit lane. We'll have a long stop to repair that damage, and will be serving, actually will not be serving a 30-second stop and go penalty, as that has to be independent of the pit stop. Not sure which will be served here, but they should be able to serve both in this lap. Saba falling behind Harvey as Harvey is just growing that gap in that Audi GT2. Poplinski still ahead of Slokey as Bird just trying to fall behind this battle and keep up best he can. Alarcon still on his own, but for how much longer? Mott in the Aston Martin seems to be a man on a mission, looking for a spot on the podium. Definitely with a pace advantage over the McLaren of Alarcon. Mott closing in. This would be the battle for the third spot as car number 14 man serves that penalty and then returns to garage to repair that car. A lot of damage on that Mercedes, and they return to garage to repair. Will be sitting there for quite some time. Harvey coming through the Kleine carousel onto the Dodinger Hoa one more time, and does he pit on this lap? Does he go one more? As we are approaching the halfway point, we'll be past the halfway point by the time he finishes the next lap. It could be a stop this lap, could be a stop next lap, could go all the way and finish, or a pit right before the finish on the second to last lap. Do not want to wait too long, as you will cross the start finish line when you, or your mandatory pit stop is not considered completed until you come out of the pit lane, and you would have crossed the line when you come out of the pit lane. So you do not need to wait too long to get this stop done. You need to get it done while you still have comfortable time left to do so. So it may be a late stop, maybe an earlier stop. Does not have too much to deal with as Harvey is all on his own. And it is a stop now for Harvey. Very, very crucial not to get a speeding penalty, as he has seen them on the race control. And does Saba come in? Saba does not come in. Saba stays out and will assume the lead, as Harvey, the overall leader and GT2 leader, now in the pits, may have enough time to be in the pits and come out before the rest of the field catches up. Darnell, the leading car with a completed pit stop right now, but that will not stay for long. Does not have enough time to get back past the GT2 of Harvey without being down a lap. Or Harvey with the stop complete, rolling out of the pit lane, and Harvey re-enters the track. Now Harvey back into the overall lead, has a completed pit stop. Car number 19 of Merkel off the track, and that car is in very, very rough shape. We'll be limping that car back down. You can see that broken suspension. It is not going to want to turn straight. Darnell goes by that broken Porsche of Merkel, and that Porsche in very, very bad shape. You can see that steering wheel turned the wrong way all the way down. That suspension is definitely broken, and that will essentially take Merkel out of the fight here, as he will be spending a long time in pit lane. Saba onto the Nordschleife all on his own, and this is the part of the race where you can lose it. Everything has gone your way, you're all on your own. But this is where you can't let complacency get to you. You still need to continue pushing, you can't let up. You just need to stay focused and bring this race home. Saba desperately needs these points, as pit stops have begun. Breakfast into the pits. Bird coming out of the pits. Who else is in the pit lane? Don't see anyone else in the pit lane. Alarcon going past the Mercedes-AMG GT2 of Man. Horner now coming into the pit lane to, I believe, serve a stop and go penalty. That will drop Horner back down the order once more. Merkel bringing that very, very damaged Porsche GT3 into the pit lane to repair that car and will likely be sitting in the pit lane for a long time. Crilly coming into the pit lane, damage on that Porsche as well, but not as bad as Merkel. And Crilly will get that car repaired and back out on track shortly. Saba all on their lonesome out on track by themselves. Next car behind Slokey. Saba and Slokey still have a pit stop to make. Harvey on track behind Slokey. Poplinski behind Harvey. Car number 915 does get that stop and go served and is now back out on track. P5 back of the field in GT2 after fighting for the lead very early. Unfortunate luck for Horner, but that is the way it goes, especially here with the green hell. It did not earn its name for no reason. Poplinski P2 in GT2 with Bird quite a ways behind. Poplinski likely to come in and serve their pit stop at the end of this lap and should have a big enough cushion to do so without losing position to Bird. Harvey on a different strategy call than Poplinski. Poplinski may be just behind on track, but is not just behind in terms of position. Still needs to serve that pit stop, which I believe is around 30 or 40 seconds from entry to exit. Alarcon with Ditto behind both of these drivers on the same strategy, not having served their pit stop yet. Crilly with a stop and go penalty for speeding in pit lane now. The pit lane speeding penalties have not been few. There have been quite a few, and many of those drivers getting them have been repeat offenders, getting another pit lane speeding penalty. Merkel still trying to repair that Porsche 992 GT3R. Poplinski still out on track running their own race. Mott also on their lonesome, but Alarcon and Ditto a battle for position here. This is P4 in GT3. And the majority of the GT3s not having served a pit stop yet. The leading GT3s, all except for Darnell, which Darnell has found his way back up the order, just running a safe race. No mistakes will bring this race back into his hand. He is creeping his way back up into the points, but just needs to keep that car on track, keep the laps safe. Darnell is searching for the very, very crucial balancing point between pushing and consistent, pushing and safe. As long as he keeps his race clean, he may find himself walking into a podium position, which would be very, very important in securing his championship lead and ultimately the win at the end of the racing tonight. Poplinski still on their own. Harvey looking to assume the overall lead of the race again. Saba and Slokey still need to make their stops. Slokey wide at the carousel. That will cause him to lose a lot of exit speed headed up the hill towards Hayacht. And Saba still running their own race. Does not seem to be any more damage on that Lamborghini than there already was. Through Flonsgarten, a little bit of a jump there, touch of the brakes to bring that nose back down, and then fourth gear, then fifth gear, trying to carry as much speed as you can, ultimately sixth gear as you come through the S's. And then up into Schwalbenschwanz before we get to the Kleine Carousel. Very, very crucial section of track here as it sets you up with all the speed that you need for the Dottinger Höhe. You can lose a lot of time through this section of track, which ultimately causes you to lose a lot more time down the Dottinger Höhe. But Saba does it right and keeps it clean this time. Darnell coming out of the carousel. A few cars ahead. Car number 14 of Man being the next car ahead. But the battle between Alarcon and Ditto still raging on as they come through Brunchen, aka YouTube Corner. Alarcon ahead of Ditto. Alarcon with a lot of damage on that car. Ditto, I believe, with minimal damage on that car. A little bit of front end damage, but not too much. Nothing too crazy. And Ditto just pushing, trying to get this position away from Alarcon. Alarcon nearly losing it, headed towards Flonsgarten. And I believe that will give Ditto a large advantage in pace over Alarcon as they head to the S's. Saba dives into the pit lane. Will Saba repair the damage on that car? Is it worth doing so? As Saba has a large cushion. Slokey, the next car on track. Slokey may come into the pit lane, but I don't think Slokey is close enough to maybe go for an overcut. I think Slokey will just have to hope to keep the position that he has. Currently P2 in class with Mott P3, but Mott with no damage on that Aston Martin, or minimal damage on that Aston Martin. A little bit of scratches on the side of that car, but nothing that would majorly affect the aerodynamics of that car. And car number 42 of Slokey lost the car at Hohenrain, and I'm not sure how much damage is on that car now. Very, very crucial. Slow the car down. Do not get a speeding penalty, and hopefully does not have too much more damage on that car. Mott now coming into the pit lane behind Slokey, and Slokey has lost a lot of the gap that he had. Poplinski very, very slow in the pit lane. A collision, or Mott going into the back of Poplinski. Mott may have a little bit of time added to their stop to repair that front end damage. Poplinski may have some time added to their stop to repair that back end damage, that rear end damage. But Mott and Poplinski now coming to the pit lane to get their stops done. Alarcon and Ditto doing the same, as Ditto nearly coming to a stop to not hit Alarcon, not do the same that Mott and Ditto just did. But now the stage has been set for Darnell to use that pace to get past, has run a perfect race the rest of the way through, and it looks like he will be getting some positions back here as he comes across the line. As the time resets, where will he stand? I believe Darnell will have just gained some positions once the timing boards update, passing multiple cars in the pit lane. 4 competing cars in class, as they are all about to come out of pit lane together. Poplinski the first one out, then Mott the next, then Slokey as well. Car number 555 of Mott gets a speeding penalty for speeding through pit lane. So much pace in that Aston Martin, but just unfortunate luck heading into the pit lane. Mott gets handed a 30-second stop and go. Will have to serve that penalty, I believe, the next time they come around to the Joker lap. Alarcon and Ditto, another battle for position here, as they are both awaiting the call to come out of pit lane. I believe Alarcon may be started up. Which of these drivers has started up? It may be Ditto. Maybe Alarcon. Neither of them moving yet. Alarcon off the jacks and going. Same with Ditto. Very, very close between them. Alarcon first to get back out on the throttle. But Ditto. Ditto gets a stop and go penalty for speeding in pit lane. Mott just has a drive-through. But unfortunate for Ditto, the Aston Martins not having very good luck with the penalties. And Darnell still waiting to be scored ahead of the rest of those GT3s. We will see if he will be scored ahead when the timing boards update. Saba still in the lead. Harvey back into the overall lead as Saba has served his pit stop. Slokey P2 in GT3. And Mott not opting to serve that drive-through penalty yet. Ditto, what will be his move, essentially taken out of this fight for 4th place and out of the fight for the podium position, as Ditto will have to serve that penalty. Alarcon may have found himself in a podium spot. Mott needs to get away from this field, needs to build as much time as he can, as he will lose time down the pit lane. I believe it will be about 20 or 25 seconds. Does not fully take him out of the fight, as a mistake can be made and that time can be given back, but this whole gaggle of GT3s trying to get past the GT2 of Poplinski. Mott and Poplinski not repairing the damage on their cars, I believe not seeing it as worth it as they come through fluke plots. Darnell is scored up into P3, back into the podium positions, just 1 spot behind Saba. Darnell up into P2 in class, still has 20 minutes left to go and will have much older tires than that Lamborghini of Saba. I don't think Darnell is trying to get a win here. He is just trying to bring this car home and bring it in the points to secure his championship win. Bird now P2 in GT2. Poplinski found himself P3 in GT2, but a lot of GT3s behind. Bird got 2 tires in the dirt going down into the compression, but seems to have kept the car on track. The last thing you'd want to do is to lose the car this late in the race. Harvey still on his own up ahead with Saba just a few seconds behind. Darnell now on his own, not out of sight of a race win, just very unlikely, but anything could happen. A drive-through penalty for Saba, which is unlikely but not impossible. A incident from Saba, an incident from Darnell could give all of these positions back. An incident from either driver could take them out of the championship fight. It is just a challenge of who can survive until the end. Darnell needs to hope that he put enough fuel in that car, cannot afford another stop, as that will drop him crucially down out of the points that he needs to hold on to this championship lead. Car number 22, Crilly clearing the stop and go penalty, but still a lot of damage on that car that needs to be repaired. Ditto still with a 30-second stop and go, and Mott with a drive-through. Mott may have enough time to bring it to the line with that penalty on the car, but if you are going to go with that strategy, you need to make sure that you finish the race without disqualifying yourself for not serving that penalty. You will still be pushed back. The time will be given compared to the time that is expected to be lost with the respective penalties, but you need to make sure that if that's the strategy call you're going with, that you have enough time to do that. Darnell now wide at the carousel, but did not lose the car. Very, very good on him for keeping that car in control, but those tires seem to be showing their age. Darnell, still 20 minutes left to go on these tires. I believe the last time that we saw Darnell go with a long stop like this was very early on in this series at Zandvoort. I believe that may have been round 2 or round 3. But Darnell, not one to shy away from the long run, as everyone has served their required pit stop. Darnell just crucially needing to bring this car home in one piece. Same with Saba. Just keeping it consistent and keeping the car safe in these longer races, especially at a very, very grueling and challenging track, the Green Hell as it's known, the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Just getting the car home at the end of one of these 1-hour races is the biggest task. Poplinski now holding up Kelta, as Kelta is trying to get past the GT2 of Poplinski. Does so, but Mott gets a little bit shaken up. not expecting the move to be there, and I believe Poplinski may have got on the brakes where Mott was not expecting it. Mott 2 tires in the dirt, but was able to keep that car under control. Breakfast on his own with Ditto behind, but Ditto with that 30-second stop-and-go penalty. Extremely unfortunate for Ditto, was showing a lot of speed in that car tonight. Just unable to have the luck fall in his hands, which is just as much of just as important of a part of a race as it is your pace and strategy. You need a little bit of luck. Luck goes a long way. Harvey still ahead in the lead, with Saba inching ever so much closer. The gap was right around 12 seconds, now just 9 seconds. Saba is showing some faster pace in that Lamborghini, and Darnell just needing to bring that car home. Bird and Slokey in a battle here, not for position, but for track position. It is a fight for the 4th place overall, but both drivers in their respective podiums. Slokey the final spot on the GT3 podium, but Kelta not far behind. Kelta needs a lot of pace to be shown in that Aston Martin if he wants to catch the tail end of that Ferrari of Slokey. That could be a battle for the final spot on the podium in GT3, and Kelta has been known to bring the pace late in the race as they brake hard for Hohenrain. The battle of Slokey and Bird may cause that gap to shrink between Slokey and Kelta, as Bird shows the advantage down into turn 1, but ultimately gives the position to Slokey. Now Kelta will be the next one to deal with Bird, as Slokey has cycled through and will now try to run away as fast as he can. Kelta will try to catch up to the rear end of that GT2 of Bird and try to get past him as well. Hope that there is some coordination, and Kelta, with 14 minutes left in this race, will try to close the gap on Slokey and put the fight on for the 3rd place position in GT3. Darnell still not showing any damage on that car, and I have not had any warnings for him. Just needs to bring that car home, doing a very good job of doing so, but as the race goes on, those tires get older and older. If you're just tuning in with us, Darnell had an incident very early on, pinging off the walls and getting some severe damage on that car. Has found himself back up into P2 in class after repairing a lot of damage on that car, getting served a meatball flag, and then bringing that car into the pit lane, and has just been running a solid race ever since then. But those tires are 40 minutes old. They have been run 90% of this race and will go to the end. Darnell just needs to bring that car home and hope that he has enough fuel in it. Darnell just on the race to the end. Car number 19 of Merkel off the track and returning to the garage. I believe that will be Merkel's night done. Slokey still running away from Bird, but as I spoke about earlier, Kelta all over the rear bumper of that Maserati GT2. Car number 9, Ditto, serving that drive-through penalty. Or actually, no, that was a stop and go for Ditto. Now Ditto out of the pit lane, very far down the order, but not out of the fight yet. Kelta now past Bird, must have been done at Hawk-Eichen. Now as they come through Flugplatz down the hill towards Schwedenkreuz. Very, very crucial part of the track here. Very easy to lose the car if you're trying to push it too hard. Kelta running all the speed that he can before you brake hard down into Arenberg. bring that car around for the foxhole, the Fuchsrow section of the track. Down the hill, full throttle, flat out, as Kelta has a goal in mind. Podium position is on the board, just needs to get that gap closed down to Slokey. Just 11 minutes left, and we will likely be on the second to last lap when we come around the next time. Car number, what is that? Car number 22 of Crilly off the track at, what section of the track is that? Is that Arenberg? I believe that may be Arenberg. Really off the track at the exit of Arenberg. The entrance of Fuchs Row re-enters the track as Poplinski goes by. No, that was after Adenauer Forest. He went off the track at Adenauer Forest. Saba still on his own in GT3, closing in on the leading GT2 of Harvey. Darnell Saba gets spit out of the carousel, just like we saw Darnell do earlier, but Saba just kept it up on the top. The worst thing that you can do if you get spit out of the carousel is try and re-enter it. If you get spit out, you just need to run along the top. It is very easy to spin the car, three-wheeling it as you try to re-enter the carousel. Just take the hand that you have been dealt and run around the outside. Now the battle between Kelta and Slokey is on. Kelta can just barely see the rear end of that Ferrari 296 of Slokey, but that is where his sights are set. Kelta trying to get the final spot on the podium here away from Slokey as the race is coming to a close. We should have this lap and one more as the leaders are coming to take the flag. We should be under a lap time away. We're at around 8 minutes 20, 8 minute 30 is the lap times that we should be seeing on track during these racing conditions. And I believe we will be under that time when we come to the line. That will be the final lap of the race when Harvey comes across the line, which means that Kelta has a lot of work to do in a short amount of time, and Kelta gets spit out of the carousel. Does manage to re-enter it though, but the car upset at the exit of the carousel, and that is playing into Slokey's hand as Kelta has now fallen back. That gap has grown, but Slokey not out of the woods yet, needs to bring his own race home as well. Kelta and Slokey both pushing, and they both understand what's at stake. Kelta with a lot of time to make up now though, as that Aston Martin throwing flames as he goes down the gears into Whipperman. Then up the hill towards Eisbach. Then eventually to Brunchen, which is where you see so many people set up. This, I believe, Brunchen is, I believe, where the party is during the race. It's either Brunchen or the corner just before the carousel, the places where you see the majority of the people line up during the Nordschleife 24-hour, which is a bucket list event to attend of mine, as I believe it is very many people's. The 24-hour of the Nordschleife is an event rivaling that of the 24-hour of Le Mans. Slokey all over the curbs and the S's. That car bouncing all over the place. The last thing that he needs to do is make a mistake this late in the race, as that would surely give the position to Kelta. Kelta not out of this fight, as Kelta showing a higher or a better pace than Slokey so far. Just needs to keep that car together on track. And we should be on the final lap now, as Harvey has taken what should have been the white flag here. Saba still behind. Just a lap to go. Darnell with those tires surely screaming to be taken or to be put out of their misery. Just has a little more time left to go. Slokey and Kelta. Slokey currently in P3 in class. Car number 22 of Crilly off the track again. Mott, big damage on the front of that Aston Martin. Would be surprised if he does not have a meatball flag for that car for that damage on the front. But does seem to be drivable currently. Kelta as the timing boards update as they come through Hohenrain. How has that gap changed? Has it grown? Has it shrunk? Slokey, then Kelta. The gap has grown a second and a half up to nearly 5 seconds now. And as they break for turn one last time, Kelta with a little bit of a stumble coming through turn 1 and then eventually turn 2. But it is not over yet. Slokey needs to not make any mistakes. Kelta needs to run an absolutely perfect lap. Push, push, push for him as he needs to capitalize any potential mistake that Slokey may make. This is where the pressure sets in. It's the final lap of the race, and this is a battle for the GT3 podium. You can win your race here, or you can lose it completely. You just need to keep the nerves calm and bring it home. Car number 915 of Horner with Alarcon behind. Car number 19 of Merkel around at, I believe that was Metzigesfeld. The gap between Harvey and Saba closing. Saba wants the overall win here. And Harvey may be running a little bit slower pace than he was, may be in position to give it to him. Darnell just putting on the race that he needed from the very beginning. Bringing the masterclass that he needed. Just needed to bring home a clean race from beginning to end, and has pretty much done it here. Currently sitting P2 in class with a large gap, 40 seconds between him and the next car. Kelta still behind Slokey. I'm not sure if Kelta is close enough to be in the background of any of these shots of Slokey. You can hear him, but you can't see him. See his name go by just through the hill there, but not quite close enough yet to be in contention for the position. Any other battles on track going on? Kaplinski all on their own, currently P3, the final spot on the GT2 podium. Horner coming through the Schumacher S for the final time. Everyone should be on their final lap. Ditto, extremely unfortunate for Ditto getting that pit lane penalty. Had what was nearly a podium on the books stripped away there at the pit stop, which can happen, is very common. Harvey with Saba just behind, but Saba nearly losing the car coming out of that turn there, that turn of Bergwerk. Got too much of the curb at the exit. Very easy to lose the car there, as it is a very steep curb. You can use it, but it is not recommended. And that has opened the gap to Harvey. Saba pushing for this overall win here. And I don't think Saba will have the time to do it. Pushing, coming out of muck curve, definitely showing that it's the position that he wants. And only a couple seconds between them as they go to head towards the carousel once again. Saba can see Harvey. And it needs to be no mistakes from here on out if Saba does want to get that overall win, but not the best entry into the carousel. Does not help Saba much there. The gap has shrunk slightly. And as they head towards the technical section here from Hoa Ocht all the way to Flansgarten, Harvey all over the track, and Harvey into the wall. Harvey into the wall on the final lap of the race. That will all but give Saba the overall lead here. as Harvey pushed too hard into Hoa Oct, and that caused Harvey to go off the track, and that has closed the gap between Saba and Harvey very much here, right on the last lap of the race as they are about to take the checkered flag. The last thing they need to do is ruin their race here. Racing too hard for nothing. This is not a fight for position, but they are definitely racing hard like it is. It's the fight for the overall win, and I think Saba wants it just to show dominance rather than get the extra points for it. There are no extra points for the overall win rather than the class win. Both class leaders here fighting like it's the last lap, and Harvey is off the track around right before Flonskart, and heavy damage on that car. And I don't think that will take Harvey out of contention for the lead, but that has given Saba the overall win as long as Saba can bring it home. But both of these drivers pushing way too hard at the end of the race. Darnell not close enough to, I think, take any sort of advantage if either of those drivers lost the car right here at the very end of the race. But Harvey, big damage on that car as they come through the Kleine carousel for the final time. Harvey still trying to limp that car home, will be limping that car home rather than pushing like Saba is now. Saba will take home the win here as long as he can survive through Tiergarten and Hohenrain one more time. Darnell a minute behind the leading duo here in the fight for P3 and GT3. Slokey has grown that gap. Kelta unable to close that gap. Bird P2 with Poplinski just behind. Bird has gone past Poplinski, but the fight is not over here in GT2. One mistake between them can be the position. This is the fight for P3 in GT2, and Poplinski all over the rear of Bird as Saba comes out of Hohenrain to take the checkered flag here and win the season finale here in the Sunday Multi-Class Series. Saba, your winner for the final time in this series. Harvey will take the win in GT2. A little bit, not the smartest moves there at the end of the race, causing a lot of damage to that car, but Harvey will take the win in GT2. Darnell coming through, or coming down the Döttinger Höhe for the final time in this race and for the final time in this season. Slokey looks to take home P3 as long as he can keep the car together just a couple more corners, but Kelta is in prime position to take advantage of any mistakes that Slokey may make. And then just behind, the battle raging on for P3 for P2 in GT2, Poplinski and Bird. Poplinski nearly running wide as they head down the hill towards the S's, but that AMG showing it has a little bit of pace over the Maserati of Bird. Poplinski trying his best to close that gap, needs to be within slipstream range of Bird before they come onto the Döttinger Höhe. If Poplinski has the slipstream, it will be a battle down into Hohenrain and Tiergarten, and Poplinski is all over the rear of Bird. Needs to be a perfect Kleine carousel for both drivers here. It is good enough. Poplinski and Bird looking to come in a fight here down the Döttinger Höhe. Poplinski needs to push coming out of this corner here before they get onto the back straight. And I think Poplinski may be within slipstream range. Will we see any weaving from Bird to break that toe? I don't think so. Is Poplinski close enough for slipstream as they head up towards Tiergarten? I think so, but maybe not close enough to get the pass. It will be a monumental move from Poplinski to get the position away from Bird. And as they head into Tiergarten, Poplinski not close enough. It would have to be a crazy move on the brakes if he wants to have any chance as they head into Hohenrain. Bird just keeping it tidy, does not overshoot it, and will take the position ahead of Poplinski. Both of these drivers on the podium. A podium for Bird and a podium for Poplinski. And that will be the end of their race. That will conclude their season. Mott now coming to the end, and I don't believe that they will have enough time to finish the race. Mott coming into Tiergarten and then Hohenrain. Just a couple corners left, but I don't think they will have enough time to finish. Mott coming out of the final corner, coming to the line. And Mott will cross the start-finish line and take the checkered flag. Same Horner coming down the Dodinger Hoa. Alarcon, Breakfast, and Ditto all coming to the end of this race. Mott has taken the car to the pit lane. Horner bringing this car into Tiergarten and Hohenrain for the final time. Horner coming across the line will take P4 in class. Alarcon coming into Tiergarten now, and Hohenrain will bring this McLaren home in one piece. And Breakfast will also bring that Porsche GT2 home, 5th place in GT2. And Ditto, the final car out on track, the last car to cross the start-finish line in this Sunday multi-class series. As Saba comes through Hohenrain. Thank you all for tuning in all the way throughout this season. Thank you to the drivers for driving. It has been a great season. Unsure of what exactly is next on the calendar, but Ditto comes across the line to conclude the Sunday GT3, GT2 multi-class series as he sends it full on into the wall. Hard contact, doesn't flip it. Try better next time, Ditto. And that will bring this session to an end, bring this season to an end. I don't think Saba scored enough points to outscore Darnell, and I believe Darnell will be your season champion. We will have to wait until the championship standings are finished, till the points are tallied. But thank you all for tuning in tonight. I will see you all on Wednesday for the KTM Cannonball Series, that season finale. If you wouldn't mind, consider following if you are not. Consider subscribing if you would like to support the channel, support the Twitch streams. Keeps me going for this, helps pay for the overlay service and things like that. And next week on Wednesday, we will be here for the season finale of the KTM Cannonball Series, where Darnell is, I believe, also in contention for a championship win at Donington Park. I believe it may be a season, or it may need to be a weekend sweep for Darnell, but it is not over yet for him. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for supporting the streams. Have a good night. Thank you to the drivers for racing tonight. It has been a good season. Very, very much fun here in the Sunday series. A shame that we couldn't have Busch here tonight. Couldn't have the full breadth of the field. But thank you to those drivers for racing tonight. Thank you for you all tuning in, and I will see you all on Wednesday for the KTM season finale.